Ever feel like the internet never really sleeps?
It's always on, that's for sure.
It's true. And today's deep dive, it's all about how to keep up with that expectation, specifically zero downtime deployments and continuous scaling.
Right, because those systems that we rely on, they need to be firing on all cylinders 24/7.
Absolutely. No time for downtime, right? And to help us unpack all of this, we're tapping into the wisdom of Kamyar Shah.
Oh, he's a great resource for this.
Yeah.
Been in the tech trenches for over 2 decades, from e-commerce to, get this, medical. He's seen it all.
He really has, and he always has these great analogies. Like, he talks about how these concepts, zero downtime deployment specifically, went from like a nice to have
Yeah.
to absolutely essential.
Well, think about it. Imagine if a store, a brick-and-mortar store, shut down every time they needed to, like restock the shelves or rearrange things.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Right. That's the old way of doing deployments.
Yeah.
Disruptive, inconvenient.
It's true. We'd never stand for that in the real world, right?
Yeah.
Kamyar uses this analogy of like changing a tire on a moving car, which I love.
It really gets the point across.
So with zero downtime deployments, we're basically talking about making those updates without ever pressing pause for the user.
Exactly. Seamless transition.
Seamless. But it's got to have more benefits than just, avoiding those error messages.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Continuous service availability. You're talking about a smoother user experience, reduced risk of something going wrong at the worst possible time.
Okay, so you've got my attention. No more like launching a new feature and then praying your site doesn't crash.
The anxiety is real.
It is, but I have to imagine this can't be simple to pull off in practice.
You're right to be skeptical.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as just flipping a switch. One challenge is just the potential for inconsistency. Yeah, even if they're temporary, right?
Yeah.
While you're transitioning between versions. And then there's monitoring.
Oh, right. Got to have mono.
Rock solid monitoring to catch any hiccups instantly.
So no magic wand, but there's got to be like systems, right?
Systems, strategies, yeah.
Kamyar talks about a few strategies, so let's break those down. First up, blue-green deployments.
Okay.
Which, I don't know, sounds a little bit more like an interior design scheme than like a...
Than a tech strategy.
Yeah.
Definitely not interior design.
Okay.
Picture this, okay? You have 2 identical production environments, one blue, one green. One is live. The other one's like your staging ground for the next update.
Okay, so you got a backup?
Yeah. You test everything rigorously on the green side, and when it's good to go, you seamlessly switch traffic over. So then green is live, blue is your backup.
So it's like having like an understudy, waiting in the wings, ready to take the stage.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Minimize disruption. But what's the trade-off here? Maintaining 2 of everything can't be cheap.
You hit the nail on the head. That's the big consideration, right? Double the infrastructure. That means double the cost. Plus, you got to keep your data synced between the 2, so nothing gets lost in translation.
Yeah, you don't want to lose anything. Makes sense. Okay, what about Canary deployments? Is this where we test things out on, like, unsuspecting users?
Not quite unsuspecting. Imagine releasing a new feature, but only to a small, controlled group, your canaries. This lets you observe their experience, gather feedback in a real-world setting.
So it's like a beta test.
It's like a very targeted beta test, exactly. And then you can spot issues before rolling the update out to everybody.
Ah, so it's more like dipping your toes in the water before, diving in head first.
That's a good way to put it.
Minimizing risk? I like it. But there's always a catch, isn't there?
Of course. You need a way to direct those canaries to the new version, which requires, some fancy traffic routing behind the scenes.
Oh, so it's more complicated than it sounds.
A little bit. And then there's the potential for inconsistencies in the user experience, right? Because imagine you're using an app and your friend's using the same app, but they've got this cool new feature that you don't have access to yet.
Ah, yeah, not ideal. Not a good look.
Not the best user experience.
So for a more gradual approach, we've got rolling updates.
That's right. Instead of like a big bang switch, you update your application gradually, either instance by instance or in small batches.
Okay.
Think of it like updating apps on your phone, one at a time.
So less disruptive, and it doesn't require, doubling my infrastructure costs. It's appealing.
It can be a good fit for certain applications, especially if minimizing disruption is like mission critical. However, managing all those individual updates can get complex, especially when you're dealing with, lots of user data.
So 3 different strategies, each with their like pros and cons, kind of like choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly. The best deployment strategy depends on the application, your tolerance for risk, your existing infrastructure. And that's why understanding these options is so important.
Well said. Speaking of ensuring our systems can handle anything we throw at them, let's move on to our second topic, continuous scaling.
Okay, so we've tackled how to update our systems seamlessly. Now let's talk about making sure those systems can handle whatever we or our users, throw at them. Continuous scaling, am I saying that right?
You got it. It's like, imagine having a flexible event space, right?
Yeah.
And it just magically expands to fit everyone who shows up. That's continuous scaling.
I like that. That's a good visual. So why is continuous scaling so crucial in this, always on world we live in? Well, think about it. We expect websites and apps to be available 24/7. And these systems, they need to adapt to these ever-changing demands. Traffic spikes, new users, you name it.
Yeah, it's like that collective groan that goes out when a website crashes during a big sale. Nobody wants to be that company.
Exactly. And continuous scaling, it's all about making those crashes a thing of the past.
Music to my ears. But it can't just be about handling those big dramatic moments, can it? What about just making sure things run smoothly day to day?
You're absolutely right. It's not just about the big stuff. Continuous scaling is also about efficiency.
Yeah.
You don't want to be paying for resources you're not using. It's about finding that sweet spot. Optimal performance without unnecessary costs.
Now we're talking saving money and keeping things running smoothly. But how do we actually achieve that balance? What are the mechanics of continuous scaling?
So Kamyar highlights a couple of key strategies. The first is what we call horizontal scaling. Think of it like adding more lanes to a highway. As traffic increases, you add more servers to distribute the load, and that prevents bottlenecks.
Okay, so more servers, more capacity, that makes sense. What about vertical scaling?
Vertical scaling, that's like upgrading your engine. You're giving your existing servers more power to handle bigger workloads, more RAM, more processing power. Think of it like, going from a 4-cylinder engine to a V8.
Okay, so horizontal is about adding more. Vertical is about making what you have stronger. But I imagine it's not quite as simple as just throwing more servers or RAM at the problem, right? There's got to be more to it.
You got it. Continuous scaling, it's a bit more nuanced than that. It requires sophisticated algorithms and monitoring systems that can automatically detect changes in demand and adjust resources accordingly.
So it's like having a system that can, think on its feet and respond in real time.
Exactly. It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
That makes sense. But what about the database? That seems like it could become a major bottleneck, right? If everything else is scaling up, but the database can't keep up.
That's a great question. You've hit on a critical point that honestly often gets overlooked. Database scaling, it's absolutely crucial. Imagine a library, right? And the librarians can't keep up with the number of books being borrowed and returned chaos. Kamyar talks about techniques like using what we call read replicas, which helps handle more queries, and sharding. Sharding is basically like splitting your database into smaller, more manageable sections.
So it's about making sure your data infrastructure can, keep pace with the rest of your system.
Precisely. It's about making sure everything works together seamlessly.
And that brings us to, I imagine, a whole other layer of complexity, right? Making all this work in the real world. So we've talked about keeping our applications updated and able to handle any scale of traffic, all while the wheels are turning.
Right. No downtime allowed.
Exactly. But how do we actually put all this into practice? Is there, a secret sauce, some magic button we can just press?
Oh, I wish it were that simple.
Right.
Kamyar, he talks about the importance of something called infrastructure as code, IAC.
Oh, okay. IAC.
Yeah, I know that sounds, pretty technical,
It does.
but stick with you for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could describe your entire technical infrastructure, servers, networks, the whole shebang in code.
Okay.
That's essentially what IAC is, right?
How?
Instead of manually configuring everything,
Oh, okay.
you use code to manage and set up your entire system.
So it's like having blueprints, but instead of on paper, it's code.
Exactly.
That's pretty slick, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
So what's the main advantage of, going this route? Why is this the way to do it?
So IAC offers several advantages. Firstly, it ensures consistency and reproducibility, right? So your code becomes like the single source of truth for your infrastructure. And it allows you to easily create identical environments for testing, staging, production.
So no more dealing with those annoying inconsistencies that always seem to crop up between, different environments.
You got it.
Okay, what else? What else we got?
Another major benefit is version control. Just like you track changes to your application code, IC lets you track changes to your infrastructure.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So you can easily roll back to previous
Oh,
versions.
that's nice.
Yeah, and it helps you collaborate seamlessly with your team.
So it's taking those software development best practices and applying them to like your whole infrastructure.
Exactly. Treat your infrastructure like
Okay.
code.
Smart. But even with like a rock solid infrastructure, things can still go wrong, right? So Kamyar mentions these automated rollback mechanisms and resilience testing as like the next line of defense. What are those all about?
Think of it like, safety nets and rigorous training all rolled into one. So automated rollback, it's all about creating a system that can automatically detect issues and revert back to like a stable state, like hitting the rewind button on your deployments.
I like it.
Right. And resilience testing, on the other hand, that's about proactively trying to, break your system in a controlled environment. It's like a stress test
Oh, okay.
for your applications, helping you identify weaknesses and build in the necessary safeguards.
It's like simulating a worst case scenario to make sure your system can handle it. So you're not just hoping for the best, you're actively preparing for the worst.
You got it, exactly. And with that preparation comes a higher level of confidence in your system's ability to, weather any storm.
Confidence is key, for sure. But how do we know what's going on with our system, like, in real time? It's not like we can just, like, peer under the hood and see all the gears turning.
Right, right. And that's where monitoring and observability come in. Think of it like the dashboard in your car, right? You've got your speedometer, your fuel gauge, engine temperature, all these indicators. They provide these real-time insights into how your car is performing, and monitoring and observability tools. They provide that same level of visibility, but into your applications, your infrastructure.
Oh, okay. So instead of flying blind, you have all this data to, like, inform your decisions. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But Kamyar also talks about the importance of something called DevOps culture. What's that all about?
So DevOps, it's all about breaking down those silos that often exist, between development and operations teams. It's about fostering collaboration, shared responsibility, this culture of continuous improvement.
So it's not just about having the right, like, tools and technologies. It's
Yeah.
also about having the right people and the right, like, mindset.
Precisely. You can have the most advanced automation, the most sophisticated monitoring in the world,
Yeah.
but if your teams aren't communicating effectively, if they're not working together towards a common goal, you're really not going to realize the full potential of these approaches.
Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say.
Well said.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from zero downtime deployments to continuous scaling to infrastructure as code, so much good stuff. As we wrap up here, what's like the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with?
Mastering zero downtime deployments and continuous scaling, it's an ongoing journey. It's not like you reach a destination. The tech landscape is constantly evolving, so staying ahead of the curve, it requires a commitment to continuous learning, adaptation, innovation. The insights that we've explored today, drawn from Kamyar's, vast experience, they're a great starting point. But keep digging deeper, keep experimenting, and most importantly, never be afraid to embrace new ideas and, challenge the status quo.
I love that. And that's a wrap on another episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those servers running.